So the Mishnah told us three halachas. Someone that reads Shema, or three opinions. Someone that reads Shema and doesn't pronounce the words, you can't hear it for yourself, you're Yetzer, according to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda says you're not Yetzer. If you said Shema, it's too quiet, even you yourself can't hear it, you didn't fulfill the mitzvah, even b'diavad. You have to be able to hear the words that you're saying. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yossi says, next halacha, if someone read the words, but he wasn't careful to pronounce them properly, like b'chol levavchem or things like that, then according to Rabbi Yossi, he's fine. You're still Yetzer. You should be careful, but if you didn't, it's still okay. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're not Yetzer. You weren't careful to enunciate the words, the letters properly, you did not fulfill the mitzvah. And the Mishnah says someone that read the Shema backwards, so one pasuk, let's say the Man Yirbu, and then he went to pasuk before that, and so on, he is not Yetzer. It has to be in the proper order. And finally, someone that read and made a mistake, you got confused where you're up to, go back to before you made the mistake and continue from there. But what we really want to focus on now is this halacha, that when you say Shema and you can't hear it, that you're not Yetzer. Doesn't mean you're not Yetzer. It's better to say it and you should hear it. What if you didn't? No. Yeah. So reflecting on my time of Rabbi Yossi, what's the reason of Rabbi Yossi that he says you're not Yetzer, you didn't fulfill the obligation if you didn't hear the words? His answer is Mishum T'chsiv Shema. It says Shema here, and we learn Shema means Hashma la'oznecha ma'ashat ha'meitzim mipicha. Let your ears hear what you're saying out from your mouth. Right now, it's only Krishma. Even Shemona Esrei, just as a side note, it has to be verbalized that technically you could hear it. It's very, very low, but it's hearable. It still has to be quiet. Yeah. But that is what Rabbi Yossi says. The Tanakama holds, Shema does not mean you have to hear what you're saying. Rather, what it means is like this. You have to understand what you're saying. And if you understand a different language, the word Shema is coming to teach you. Not that you have to enunciate it loud enough that you should be able to hear, but that if you want to say it in a different language, it's okay. It's fine. Rabbi Yossi Tarti Shema Mina. Rabbi Yossi says, I learned two things from this. Normally, you can't learn two things out of one pasuk or one word. But here it's different because it's the simple meaning of it. Shema here means understand, means listen. So he says you can learn, usually you can't learn two things, but in our case, it's so basic, you could learn both things. You have to hear, and you need to and you could say it in any language that you want. As a side note, we shouldn't say it on the screen, maybe yes, when the Reform movement began, one of the things they did was they published Siddurim, prayer books, in other languages, in German and other things. And there's an answer from the Chassam Sefer, I think, or the Ksav Sefer, it was Chassam Sefer. He writes that it's not allowed, but it says that you could do it. So he says, if you need a little bit, there's the Machlekes in Rishonim, if you could say davening in other languages. He says, if you want once in a while, you're a beginner, you don't understand, you want to do a different language, that's fine. But to make it a kavua, that from now on, we're not doing it in Hebrew, doing it in a different language, he says you're not allowed to. So it's important that Shema should be in the original Hebrew, like proper, and the rest of them is to help a beginner till he understands to continue. As both, right? As both. On the other side, the other language. Yeah, it also doesn't change the kavua part. Another piece is that the shul is davening in a language. You didn't change the language. You made it translatable for a person who doesn't understand. It's a side note, but it's important. Once we're talking about if you could say Shema in any language, you could. But on a regular basis, to change it is not the ideal. You try to learn to be able to pronounce it. That's why even the translations have transliteration in the back or in the middle. That you should be able to say it in the original Hebrew. A different issue, you have to understand what you're saying. So there's work to be done to learn to study and so on. Okay, so now we're going to discuss who is really the author of this Mishnah, what are really their opinions, is it lechatchila, is it b'diavad, and so on. Not Hassam, we learned in a different Mishnah regarding Truma, a deaf person that could speak, but he can't hear. He should not do the mitzvah of Truma, let someone else do it for him. You have a big amount of produce, you have to take off a certain amount of Truma for the Kayin, or in these days to burn it. You should not do it if you can't hear. And if you did do it, then it is Truma. The reason is because there's a bracha you have to say. And he can't say it, he could, but he can't hear what he's saying. And because he can't hear what you're saying, don't do it, because he won't properly be fulfilling it, or won't be properly doing the bracha. Man Tana, who is this Tana that says, who is this Tana that said, the above mentioned halacha, that a deaf person that speaks and doesn't hear, then if it's after the fact, if he did it anyways, you're Yetzah. But the Chatchila, you should not do it. So just as a klal, as a principle to understand, there's two things. There is the ideal, what halacha says you should do this. In our case, don't do the truma because you can't hear what you're saying. But if you did it, it's still okay. Meaning, b'di'eved, you don't say you're not Yetzeh Shema, or in this case, Truma, because you couldn't hear it. The proper way to do it is you should be able to hear it. If you didn't, also okay. Second best. B'di'eved, after the fact, it's okay. So who is this author of this Mishnah? Because it doesn't say who it is. Who is it? But Rav Chisda said, I'm going to tell you it's Rabbi Yosi. How do I know it's Rabbi Yosi? From our Mishnah. Because Rabbi Yosi said that you're Yetzeh if you said Shema, and you didn't hear what you were saying. It was Tanakama said that you're not Yetzeh. Don't forget. Rabbi Yosi said you're not Yetzeh. So our Mishnah here says about Truma, it says that b'di'eved it's okay. I'm going to tell you that the author of this Mishnah is Rabbi Yosi, but in our Mishnah he says that you're not Yetzeh. So how do you say it's him? It's not a case from the Mishnah that Yosef did with Rabbi Yosi. Ad kan lekam Rabbi Yosi le'etza el gabi krishma de'iraisa. But Truma mishum bracha hu bracha d'Rabbanan bracha d'Rabbanan. He says, I'll tell you why it's different. In our Mishnah, we're talking about Shema. So Rabbi Yosi says specifically about Shema, which is biblical. It's a mitzvah to say Shema, that if you didn't hear the words, you're not Yetzeh. Truma, which the bracha of Truma, whatever, it's a bracha. You say whatever, it's important, but it's d'Rabbanan. So Truma was done. You didn't hear the bracha that you said. It's okay. The Truma is still fine. And that's why he says b'di'eved, because ideally, you should do it the correct way. But if you said it, it's d'Rabbanan, and it's only the bracha, and it's fine. And in addition, he says, the bracha, the mitzvah of truma doesn't depend on the bracha. You could have given truma without a bracha, it would still be a valid truma. So we're not going to say that because you couldn't hear the bracha, the whole truma is not good. It's still good. Even without a bracha, it's good. So now the Gemara says, so fine. It's a good logic to tell you that the Tana of this Mishnah about Truma is Rabbi Yosi, because our Mishnah, he says about Shema, which is Deraisa, Truma, he agrees. Huh? Yes, we're still in the first. Correct. The second one is a little bit more lenient. Why did you decide that it's Rabbi Yosi? Dilma Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe it goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. And he says, maybe Rabbi Yehuda holds that for Shema also l'chatchila it's not okay. B'di'eved, if you said Shema and you couldn't hear what you were saying, you're Yetzeh, unlike Rabbi Yosi. But he also feels that l'chatchila it's okay. So which means he says for Shema l'chatchila you should hear it, and if not, you're Yetzeh. And for Truma l'chatchila you shouldn't do it if you can't hear, but b'di'eved you're Yetzeh. So it could work with Rabbi Yehuda also. Why should he say it's Rabbi Yosi? We should know the Katani Hakoire. When it says Hakoire, this is a klal. When the Mishnah uses the word Hakoire, means someone that reads, it means the Eved in the Chatchilaloi. Or Amri. It should be Hakoire the Eved in the Chatchilaloi. That if it's b'di'evet, the word hakere, one that reads, it means if you read it, then the chatchila you should not do it this way, but if you did, then it's okay. So basically, I'm going to tell you that according to Rabbi Yehuda, the chatchila, he also says it's not a good idea. And I can apply this to Truma also, just from learning the word. Usually we focus in on the words of a pasuk. But the Gemara is telling you that even in the words of a Mishnah, you figure out if the Tana is implying a chatchila or di'evet or both, and so on. Amri Haide Kotani Hakede, the reason why it says Hakede, I'll tell you a little differently. You're telling me that when it says Hakede, it means di'evet, only after the fact. The reason why we say Hakede, I'll tell you, is to tell you the koyach, the strength of Rabbi Yesi. The Amar di'evet namiloi. He comes along and says, even di'evet, I disagree. So the reason why it says Hakede is not to tell you that according to Rabbi Yehuda, the chatchila is not good. It's coming to tell you something else. That Rabbi Yesi was such a respected or authoritative figure that even though it's di'evet, and you would think that according to the di'evet it's okay, Rabbi Yesi says no. But di'evet krishma, you did not fulfill the mitzvah if you didn't say it in a way that you could hear it. Because if it's according to Rabbi Yehuda, even the chatchila is yetze. So why did you decide that it goes according to Rabbi Yesi? So basically, we keep on challenging that you don't have a proof to tell me that this Mishnah about Truma is according to Rabbi Yesi. You're trying to prove to me from the Mishnah that Rabbi Yesi is specific about the chatchila and the di'evet. But the chatchila, he agrees that you shouldn't do it. And the di'evet, it's fine. And I'm going to tell you that even according to the Tanakama, I could learn the same thing. So I could apply Rabbi Yehuda to this Mishnah of Truma. And I'll tell you, it says Hakere. Okay, it's teaching you something else. That Rabbi Yesi, you got to listen to what he has to say. What about this that we learned in a different brayso, a different halacha regarding benching? It says, Lo yivarech adam b'chas hamazon b'libay. A person should not bench b'chas hamazon in his heart. Now, just to clarify, b'libay does not mean that it's quiet. That's called not leishmi ala oznei. Liba means it's very, very low. Okay, there's two levels. I'm sorry, Liba is leishmi ala oznei. There is a level where it's completely quiet. It's in your mind. It's machshava. We're not talking about that. You definitely have to say the words. Question is, if I said it like in our Mishnah, I said it, but I didn't bring it out. I didn't say it in a way that I could hear it. So there's two ways that the Mishnah could tell you that a person is saying something, but he can't hear it. One way is in our Mishnah when it says leishmiya la'oznai or biliboy. We say, when we speak in among ourselves, by heart or in your heart means you didn't say it. But here it means you said it. It wasn't loud enough. That's what we think. That's what usually we use. But here it doesn't mean he said it. Benching you have to say. Everyone agrees you have to say. The question is how loud. Even very low. Very low is also okay. It's said, so you could hear it. Very, very low, like that you can hear it. Yourself can hear it. It's the same. Same thing. Yeah. Liba is balach in this context. So the Brachos says, but if he did the bracha, if he did it anyways, he's still yetze. Money, who is the Tana of this Mishnah? Later Yesu, later Yehuda. It's not going to go not according to Yesu based on what we said, not according to Yehuda. Why? Yehuda said Yehuda also yetze. Right? Because in our Mishnah, if you said Shema, you didn't say it out loud, and it's deiraisa, just like benching is deiraisa. Yehuda says you're yetze. In our Mishnah for benching, we say b'di'evet l'chatchila you're not yetze. Rabbi Yesi, if you want to say it's Rabbi Yesi, di'evet nami loy. According to Rabbi Yesi, b'di'evet it's also not good. Right? Only if it's deiraisa. But benching is deiraisa, just like Shema. So Truma, you want to squeeze in and say it's Rabbi Yesi, which the Gemara doesn't accept. But let's go for a second to benching. that halacha, the brisa, you can't say that it's Rabbi Yossi because it doesn't work with him. Because according to the base, at least with the evidence should be okay. I'm sorry, even with the evidence should not be okay. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's also not good. Yeah. Elamai. So we have to say Rabbi Yehuda with the Eved in the Chatchila. It's Rabbi Yehuda, and in the Mishnah you have to learn the Raisa about benching a little bit different. We learned it that it's a problem, but the answer is no. The way we're going to learn the Raisa is the Raisa is telling you with the Eved it is okay, and the Chatchila you shouldn't. Okay, so the answer to the Gemara is that we misunderstood the Raisa. The Raisa is not saying it's not okay. The Raisa is saying the Chatchila it's not the way to do it. The person bench, does he have to bench again? No, you were Yates. You said it, you're Yates. So 1 second, I'll challenge you even further. We have a different brisa, which Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Shimon ben Pazi, said, "Cheresh hamedaber," different Rabbi Yehuda. Cheresh hamedaber v'nishemea, perim lechatchila. That we have a different brisa, a different Tana, that a deaf person that speaks but he can't hear, he could lechatchila go and do truma. Money, who's that opinion? Later Rabbi Yehuda, later Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda, if you want to tell me it's Rabbi Yehuda, he said the evidence is okay. And the Chatchila it's not okay. So you can't say it's Rabbi Yehuda, right? Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi says the evidence is also the problem. Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, no, I will tell you it is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said that the Chatchila is not a problem. It's not good to do it. I feel the Chatchila nami, even the Chatchila could do it, like Kashi. This is his opinion, and this is his teacher's opinion. Okay. Sometimes a student is not fully disagreeing with his teacher, but he's not accepting everything that he said. What he's going to tell us that it's not the way to do it. It works like this: if your Rebbe says something, you accept, but if you don't understand, you challenge it. So. Yeah, true. When they're real, it's a very important point. We're not talking about simple people. So you have sometimes, or rarely, but you have a case where you have a Tana saying something. That's what he's saying, and there's what his Rebbe says. Okay, so in our case, we have two different teachings from Rabbi Yehuda, and they seem to contradict on a level about the Chatchila. So we're saying one time that we heard it was from him himself, and one was from his teacher. Right? So you could challenge your teacher. In other words, you could ask a question. And there's a variation. It's not a totally argument with him. It's just a difference in the Eved versus the Chatchila. Hadidei Hadirabi. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Nazariah, a person that says Shema, you have to be able to hear it. Shenema Shema Yisrael, which is the Shema, Shem Elokeinu Shem Echad. You're telling me Shema, I'm telling you Livavecha, which means it could be quiet. It's talking about the heart. So don't push me that you have to say it. I'm going to tell you Livavecha means you have to think it. That's the focus. It says Hasha, says Lahachi, I feel him to be looking at base vidolay. Just 1 second. Once you're already telling me this is from a different author, a different source, one's him, one's his teacher, well, let me change something. If that's the case, I'll tell you one's Rabbi Yehuda, one's Rabbi Meir. Okay, we got to. Let me just do this Rashi, just to feel him Rabbi Meir. Rashi. Okay. Yeah. Everything okay?
Yeah, that was my social worker. You know the taller two?
1 second.
Oh.